Well, good day, folks. It's Sunday, the 2nd of June, 12:08 p.m. And I just thought I would do a walkabout show today. Just a walkabout. You guys know what a walkabout is, right? It's a term from the Australian Aboriginal culture. And it's where a young man would leave the tribe or the community of the Aboriginal culture in the outback and go walking alone for an indeterminate period of time. Could be months. Could be years. Let's switch the camera today. Go over to the Facebook camera. Sorry, the computer camera. I have a glistening sweat on my body. So it's a bit warm here. So I just wanted to talk today and just talk about whatever really comes to my mind. I had a few things on my mind. And given what I've done already, especially, yesterday in Blood Part 3, or 2 days ago in Blood Part 3, I wanted to take a moment and say that you don't have the right to say that it's the Jews that are doing this. It's Jewish. It comes from that culture, but it's not the Jews. Okay? The vast majority of people in that culture are in a state of hostage consciousness and victim consciousness, okay? They're raised to be in a state of victim consciousness. They're raised in a dilapidated state. Okay? Victim consciousness is pathetic. Remember, tragedy is spiritual pornography. What happens, happens. And everything is by the will of the Creator. And the Creator is real. So let's just revisit a lot of the concepts that have been dropped on you in the Talamanca Review, my podcast. We few, we marry few. We band of brothers and sisters. Because it is a small channel, but the message is getting out. Not only is it getting out, the connective, invisible material is connecting with a lot of people too. I get a lot of reports of synchronicities, dreams, all kinds of things. Incalculable coincidences. And this is all indicative of the fact that the material is connecting with you. And that's your that's your own higher self wanting to connect with you, formulating the synchronicities. It'll do so in relationship to the podcast, but it has nothing to do with me. Okay? This is the great secret. One of the great secrets, and a lot of people have abused this. Right? Even gurus in the East, especially the gurus that came over here, like Osho and people like that. 100 Rolls Royces, banging 10 different women a day up in that Oregon compound. He aggrandized himself. And so it's you. All the power is yours. It's your higher self. If I can stimulate it like a flintstone that sends a spark into dry leaves, and I can start the fire in you, I can't begin to tell you how good that makes me feel. That is the highest honor I can be given as a human being, to be of that kind of service to other human beings. So thank you to those of you who've shared your stories. Your spiritual awakening is always yours. I had to learn this the hard way. I've been through a number of paths and systems, meaning that I will work with them and obey their rules for 1 or 5 years, depending on the various paths I've studied. And then I always left, and a lot of the paths, like even a lot of what we consider to be the high Eastern paths, the way they're run today is they give you a lot of scare tactics to stay in, but it's all bullshit. Okay? The world we're going into will have no churches, no synagogues, no mosques, no ashrams, no nothing. It'll have probably a lot of intentional communities where people decide to live together and they work out their ego problems together. The guru systems are going to fall apart. Everything is falling apart now. The negative paths are being hammered now. And what's going to happen, I look at this podcast and the work I do with these books. Well, the books are different than the podcast. The books are a profound experience to sit down and read them over a week, because the process of reading is internal and external. When I'm reduced to media like a video, the process is largely just external. You listen to my voice, you look at me on the camera, and it's an external experience. The book is internal and external. So it's much more powerful as an awakening tool, as a tool that can produce phenomenon. Please don't confuse what I'm saying with disrespecting anybody who's operating in a guru capacity now. There's many good teachers on the planet. Many, many good teachers on the planet. And they make tremendous sacrifices to do what they do, and they're in service to the divine. So don't disrespect them. I'm talking about what's going to be coming about in our world, and really why it's coming about. So we're at the end of an epic cycle now. Epic cycle, in which darkness completely took over the world, at least most of the West, but I'd say most of the world right now. There isn't a single topic out there now that is of any relevance to you except self-preservation in the body so that you can live. But if you're going to stay alive, you have to have a spiritual reason for staying alive. Existence without reason, purpose, and discipline is not going to be tolerated in the age we're going into. There will be no more dilettantes. That sounds like a very bold statement, and you certainly can't see that right now. But it's going to come, and it's going to come very, very suddenly. And largely in the next decade. And all of these ham-fisted plans of these people, the World Economic Forum, the secret societies, the organizations that are human extraterrestrial hybrids, they're all coming apart. They're all going to fail. There will be no reprieve for the people who go underground. Their underground cities won't save them. The Creator will find a way to get them down there too. You at the end of the day, you can't escape God. You can't escape the Creator. A Satanist plays this little game where they think they can, but you can't. Right? And God is extremely tolerant and extremely forgiving. But the end of a cycle is the end of a cycle. And this is not even done in a punitive way at this stage. There isn't a person on the planet now, no matter how dark they are, who is not being appealed to by the Creator. Trying to open their heart, bring them back into the fold, bring them back into love. The Creator doesn't want anybody to fail in their soul journey down here. Doesn't want anybody to fail. But some people become so obstinate in their occult power that they become implacable. They become immovable. And in those instances, those people will have all of their individuality disintegrated. So I want you to think about the journey of a soul down here, or what becomes an individuated soul. The process takes billions of years in the material realm, in the way we gauge time down here. It takes billions of years. We go up through every life form on the planet, and this is why you see references to it. Even though they might not fully understand why they're even referencing it, you'll see references to it. In the Sufi system, they talked about the 7 souls. Okay, so and one of the souls is the mineral soul. So that's an acknowledgement that that the mineral consciousness is in us. And all the consciousness of being all of these things is in us. It's in us at a cellular level. We just sort of cut ourselves off from it. Some people wake up. You've all heard the stories of people who can communicate with animals. And they communicate directly. This is it's not a symbolic or an intuitive communication. There's literally an exchange of psychic energy at the level of consciousness, which articulates itself as clearly as I'm articulating myself now with my voice, with my physical voice. So what's true for one is true for all. That means if 1 or 100 or 1,000 human beings on the planet can do it, we all can do it. What's true for one is true for all. Now, to understand this situation that we're in now, you need to understand the process of individuation. The creating of an individual, an awake individual, an awake particulate of the divine that can commiserate with and resonate with the ocean of love and mercy, but also go off on its own as a separate drop and do a mission in the material or the psychic worlds on behalf of the Creator. This is the final journey. This is what we all become at the end of the journey. Okay? We become a conscious co-worker with the Creator. And our consciousness can go in and out of the collective consciousness of all the souls as one aggregate, and we can separate and come into individuality and manifest. And I mean manifest instantaneously. Not even necessarily go through the birthing process, but just manifest in any part of the universes that you want to manifest in. So what happens to the people who've been playing the power game for quite a while and can't get out of it at this stage? If they don't heed the warning, their individuality is dissipated. They're not destroyed per se. You could say that, yeah, they are destroyed. The energy that formed them and became their individuality, which was a particulate of the divine, is preserved. But all of their individuality through the many incarnations and experiences over billions of years down here are stripped away. And that energy goes back into cycle at the beginning again. At the very beginning again. It's like redoing a grade in elementary school or in high school. Except a grade you've spent 7 or 8 billion years trying to graduate. it's comically absurd. But what else would you expect from somebody who has gone this far to separate themselves from the Creator, which is the false individuation? What else would you expect? So as this message goes out now, you're going to get people who are sort of disintegrated. Doesn't mean their body will stop and they'll just drop and die. Doesn't mean that at all, per se. The body may keep living. But you'll notice this with a lot of people. Not everybody. I'm talking about the very dark people here. What else? The other thing that's going to happen, and this will account for a deluge of information. A deluge. And that is that a lot of people will answer the call when the Creator sends it. And they'll go back into the creative fold. And they'll pay whatever price they have to pay for the transgressions. Accept any forgiveness. And they'll go back into the fold. And part of their job will be to take what they know and deliver it to the human race. And so we are primed for the biggest disclosure ever. And that information is going to be a catalyst for a lot of people who've been good at the heart level, but are completely asleep at the consciousness level, to begin the waking up process so they can go into this new phase of life we're going into. And it's all conducted under the auspices of the most merciful of creators. It's, like I said, it doesn't want anybody to fail. It wants everybody to pass. It loves everybody and everything. And because we're all a part of it, you could look upon it as a form of self-love. I know that sounds strange, that God loving us is self-love, but we're God. We're an aspect, a particulate of God. So that should give you an indication of how much the Creator loves us. And when we're down here and when we're conscious, we should be returning that flow of love like a circuit back to the Creator. And this is expressed in sacrifice, true sacrifice, which is doing something that may not suit your immediate needs, may not make the people around you happy because it takes away from your time to produce materially, make more money, make everybody happy. But you make the sacrifice, and the sacrifice is representative of your love of the Creator. This is true sacrifice. It's not killing a goat in a temple, okay? It's not harvesting a human being in a ritual. That's mock sacrifice, power-based sacrifice, okay? You know what I've been saying about the other side is that whatever hell exists there is the hell you create. Well, for a lot of people, through the consolidation of that, they're creating an interim realm. Okay? This is the truth of the dark work on the planet. It's not the devil or Satan or anything like that that's creating this realm. It's human beings. And the people who allow their thoughts to commit them to that realm will be so entrenched by what they did that they can't escape unless they accept the forgiveness. But that comes with sacrifices. They're going to have to step forward and tell the world what they know and what they did. And if they don't do that, they're taken out. It's an unbelievably fascinating process. The Creator takes a huge risk creating sentient beings like a human being. Nothing else in creation behaves the way a human being does, or the way a human being can. Imagine if we lived in a world where the trees were given the same level of awareness as us. And they started saying to themselves, well, look, man, these human beings can't exist without our oxygen. Why are we giving it away for free? Why don't we sell it to them? Why don't we get them to work for us, for our oxygen? Imagine that world. Imagine a world in which the rivers realize their power in providing electricity and balancing an ecosystem, and they became conscious and said, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore for the human beings. They're taking advantage of us. We want them to do this, 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 and this for us, so we're not going to do what we need to do anymore. Imagine if the bees came to the same consciousness, the ants, the spiders, which regulate the world, by the way. No spiders. Would be overrun by insects within 5 years if spiders didn't exist. Imagine if they held us to account for that. Okay? Everything in creation below the human being serves. And when you get to a human being, the culture we've created now, what does it do? It serves itself and nothing more. Serves its pleasures, its needs, its wants, its desires. We don't even raise our children anymore. We're so selfish. And that's the end of a species. It's as Ronald Bernard said in the interview. When you start attacking the children and killing them in rituals or horribly mangling them, what you're doing is you're trying to cripple the entire human race. This is why we perceive it as extraterrestrial. There's nowhere for these people to escape. There's no other planet they can go to. There's no other world. There's no other realm. They will be hunted down wherever they go. There's no escaping what they've done. They have the option to join humanity in true heart and give us all a download, a disclosure, a revelation of what they've been up to, and cycle back into human affairs in a proper way. Many of them are too prideful to do that now. So the next 10 years or so is going to be a disclosure like nothing you've ever seen before. It'll go way beyond anything I put in The Light of Darkness, anything in The Devil in Us. All the details will come out. All of the motivation will come out. All of the relationships with extraterrestrials will come out. And everything will be brought to light. And from this trauma, the human race will be rebalanced. Because this is in many ways a giant initiation for the human race. The left hand and the right hand work together. The negative is the left, the positive is the right. The left and the right work together. The left has in many ways collapsed consciousness through the Industrial Revolution the last 140 years or so. But now it's in its collapse, because it is collapsing, the participants in it are being called back or disintegrated. In its collapse, we're going to get a tremendous surge on the right and a tremendous rebalancing of the world. It's a lot like a forest fire. I use that metaphor a lot, the metaphor of a forest fire. And the ash of the burned trees remineralizing the earth for a new growth, a new forest. When you look at the way we treat each other now, when you look at how decrepit we've become, when you look at the state of things now, where a handful of trillionaires and billionaires control whatever percentage of the wealth it is that they control, and the rest of us are left to live on scraps, that's because they're the tree that sold their oxygen. They're the river that sold its flow. They're the bees that sold their work. They're the spiders that sold their work. We are run at this point by the most self-centered and spiritually decrepit people on the planet, because we didn't understand and we allowed this to happen. But this is a giant lesson for us. The understanding is coming back now. It's coming back in a big, big way. It's a very positive and a very beautiful thing. The world is not going to be destroyed. There's going to be no cataclysm by fire. The biblical apocalypse is bullshit. This is a beautiful world that's not going anywhere. And remember, as I've been instructing you, those teachings are not of God. And prophecy is the most ridiculous form of spiritual instruction ever. It's deliberately created to enslave people. Much of the story of Christ is deliberately created to enslave people. He was the Son of God. He was perfect. He never sinned. He came to great consciousness and left great teachings, and he's still working with the world from the other side. These things I've told you on my show, but he was not perfect and he sinned. And the reason the institutions created him in the way they did is so that we could not express our divinity, which is so common and so natural, it's unbelievable. But you can't say that because you're not the Son of Man. You're not the Son of God. You're not the perfected being who never sinned, who was allegedly crucified at the age of 33, which is complete bullshit. He existed. He's still working with the human race. Listen very carefully to what I'm saying. So the stories you hear, when you hear some absolute hard-ass military dude on the Sean Ryan podcast talk about Jesus reaching out to him and opening his heart, he's telling the truth. Jesus is a real spiritual figure in the worlds we can't see right now, and he's working with human beings in a big, big way. He's been a tremendous help to us. But he told us himself, we are like him. The Catholics, they created this cult of worship, this cult of persecution, this cult of torture, this cult of inquisition, this cult of deprivation. The Germans and the Jews broke us out of it through the Reformation, through Martin Luther, what became the Enlightenment, the free thinking. But the Jews, they're going, in their madness, these Zionists, they're going for what I could only call Vatican III. which is the same thing the Vatican done, but now it's their franchise and they're going to run it from Jerusalem. God's not going to give it to them. They're not going to get it. It's over. And anybody who doesn't understand this, and everybody will be given the message, if you're really thick, really material in your thinking, it'll come in a dream. And if you don't remember the dream, you're not influenced by the dream, it'll come again and again and again until you see it. And you either get it or you don't. What has gone on this planet is an abomination. I've been documenting it since mid-2019, so 5 years. I started the Stardust Ranch in June of 2019. It's now June of 2024. It's 5 years. The gentleman I wrote the book for, the galactic historian Andrew Bartzis, classic example of a dark figure. He and his partner, David Ellis, went very dark, went the power route. Didn't start out that way. Sometimes I look at these situations and I think to myself it would be better the consciousness never had been given to them, because they wouldn't have had the temptation to go this dark. But when consciousness is given to you, it's for service and service only. It's not for your self-aggrandizement. It's not for your personal material profit. You still have to work on top of doing whatever work God gives you. If God wants you to run a small church group, and you're in touch with the Christ internally and you want to spread that, you do that with no reward of expectation of reward. If you come to consciousness in the Buddhist system and you want to teach other people, you do that with no expectation of reward. You should do that on top of continuing to make your living in a normal trade or profession. Nobody should expect to be able to live off of spiritual teachings. It is the high water mark of a corruption in a society. Nothing but physical resource like wood, water, and what have you, and our physical labor should be part of the economy. Everything else should be freely given, with the exception of the healing arts. Anybody who goes to the years and years and years it takes to become proficient in the healing arts deserves to live as a healer. Okay? Perhaps teachers as well for children. Okay? We have to build a society. Not everybody is going to be tilling the earth or building houses or what have you. There are professions that can fit into the economy. But what we've done in the world we live in now is just completely flip it upside down. The bureaucrats are the only ones making a living now, and they were created to serve us, the road builders, the house builders, the office builders. All of these services were created to serve us, and we now serve them. You've got ticket writers in a city of Toronto making $160,000 a year with overtime, $200,000 a year with overtime. Some dude's getting up at 5 a.m. every morning to go build houses for people to live in as a wood framer, a carpenter, and he's making maybe $70,000 or $80,000 a year. Why is that fair? There's this thing with human beings that we can't get good leadership. There's a book I always reference. I don't think many of you will read it. It's very thick. It's a very difficult read. However, you could probably find a decent YouTube video to watch about it. And it's called The Golden Bough by Robert Fraser, who's considered to be the father of anthropology, the science of anthropology. Again, it was written right around the time that all of this cycle we're in now starts. Late 1800s. And it describes a classical world, a pre-modern world, through the examination of a number of pre-modern societies. And in all pre-modern societies, when the leader failed, he was killed. Very often ritually killed. And his or her life were offered to rebalance. And their life was forfeit because they took leadership and catastrophe ensued. It may sound superstitious looking at it from 2024, but I promise you it would ensure a system where only people truly divinely guided to lead would lead. No more Macrons, no more Bidens, no more Trudeaus. These are not leaders. Not leaders in any way, shape, or form. Dilettantes. The world to come is one in which if you can't stand almost 80 or 90% on your own, you're not going to make it. What does 80 or 90% on your own mean? Your own water, your own food supply, your own shelter. A shelter not owned. If you bought a home under your straw man, under the voodoo doll, the government owns that. It's not yours. That's why they have the right to tax it. That's why property tax alone for some cities is $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year. That's more than most people pay in rent. But there's some people who pay that just for property tax on property they own on paper. Mortgage is paid, or they paid it outright. They own the property. And they still have to pay these outrageous taxes on an annual basis just to live. Why do it? Well, because that's where the work is. I'm such and such, Bruce. This is my profession. I have to live in the city. It's the only place I find work in my profession. Well, maybe your profession isn't going to be around after the next 7-10-year cycle we're going through. Maybe you should start planning. Maybe you should start your 10-year plan the way I started mine in 2014, so that I can now comfortably sit here and tell you what's coming, because I have freedom of perception, because I have time to think and meditate and contemplate. I'm not running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Not a lot of people are going to come out of on the other side of what we're going through. And this will instill a tremendous respect for life in the people who remain. The deaths to come will be almost incalculable. It's billions. Not millions, not tens of millions, not hundreds of millions. It's billions. Okay? Billions. Another thing that I want you to do is I want you to audit in your mind all of the spiritual instruction you took in and accepted as true and used as a foundation, as an assumption. You didn't verify it with your own spiritual process, but you use it as a foundation in your perception of reality. Re-audit all of that stuff. See if it stands up, if it has a vibration of truth as you close your eyes and think about it. It's always important to close your eyes when you think about these things. The simple act of closing your eyes engages your feeling center more than when you're thinking with your eyes open. Were you fed a load of bullshit by some new age teacher who was just in it for themselves? Do they really have a connection with the divine, or are they just parroting some psychobabble, some multidimensional babble they learned when they were allegedly tortured in the cults and left and started their cult? You see where I'm going with this? Audit everything you've taken in your whole life. Audit it all. It might even be better to start anew now, to start with no assumptions like a 7-year-old. Forget everything you thought you knew. Map out in your mind what's going to happen when these systems collapse in cities. And these cities are populated by the spiritually dead, spiritual zombies. Everybody is going to become a predator. Because you don't have a choice when you're physical, unless you can peacefully kneel down like a Japanese and end your life. Or unless you can just take some sleeping pills and lie down on your bed in your apartment and just go to the other side because you don't want to kill people to fight for whatever remaining resources are available. The country people aren't going to be allowing their population to go up 20, 30, 40, 50 times in 6 months because it's going to deplete the natural ecosystem they live in. So they're going to protect their systems. So what's going to happen to all these people in cities? What's going to happen to the 25 million, 30 million people in New Delhi, India? What's going to happen to the people in Bangalore, India? What's going to happen to the people in Shanghai? You see, it's not just North America. Nobody wins. It ain't BRICS, it ain't Russia, it ain't China. It's nobody. Nobody. This is the scope of the reset. This is not business as usual. If you're still looking at this through geopolitics and the machinations of the Hegelian dialectic and your ham-fisted understanding of black magic, you're not seeing it correctly. The creators come in. Now, whether the creator creates a peaceful transition so what I'm describing doesn't happen, or the creator just resets the system so life can go on and we're not destroyed once and for all, I don't know. But if it's the version where life goes on, what happens to all these people with they may not be in the cult, they may not be negative, they may love and protect their children, but they've bought into this system. They've been a bullshit lawyer, a public prosecutor, a public defender. They're filthy, their hands are filthy. Their conscience is filthy. Is that system going to continue? What about all the doctors who really don't know anything about healing people? They just throw a bunch of chemicals in the body or cut it open and change something. What happens to them? If we're going to a more spiritual system, what happens to all these systems which are satanic now? And if you've been listening to me, you know why they're satanic. They've been working at this since about 1880. 4 generations. How quickly can we turn all this around? I don't know. It's above my pay grade. I do not know. But I know it's happening. And I know you don't want to get caught in a bad system. Now, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. The creator and the agents of the creator could have a system set up where a baton is going to be passed. You know, out with the bad, in with the new. Same system, but we get honest banking. We get, my banking model is employed. We destroy the IMF. We just maintain a central bank. People don't pay income tax anymore. The cities are revamped. All the negative energy work on the ley lines is reversed. Could this system we're living in now be retrofitted to go forward in a positive way? Possibly. But I'm very doubtful. Because all of the planning and all of the architecture has been done by diabolical people who hate the Creator, who hate us, who hate this planet, who hate everything. They are literally the living manifestations of destruction and self-interest. What is this system that we're living in? Is it one in which only a handful of dominant trees convinced all the other trees or forced all the other trees to stop giving away their oxygen and commodified everything? If that's the case, then the bad trees are going to be taken out and the trees can go back to doing what they're doing. Are there enough loving people on the planet to take over these systems? I don't know. My heart says it's doubtful. Very, very doubtful. Extremely doubtful. Because everybody who's been living in that system, even for a decade, let's say somebody is 34, 35 years old, they finished their education at 25 with a master's degree, or if they're super smart, a PhD. They've got a PhD in economics. They've got a PhD in urban design, urban planning, or a combination of 2 or 3 different degrees, but 7 or 8 years of post-secondary education from 17 or 18 to 25. And they've got 10 years in the job. They're completely invested in this negative system. Are they going to have the turn of heart to sacrifice the benefit they think they deserve, which is to live better than other people, to drive the BMW, to have the nice wife and the mistress on the side? Are they going to give all that up and live right? Who knows? Who knows? Selfish people are selfish people, and when you get used to living selfishly, it's very difficult to change. My parents were very selfish people. I spoke to my mother today. I don't often speak to her since my father died, but today is my father's birthday. I gave her a call. We spoke for 10 minutes. On his mother's side, my son, he was raised in a Portuguese family. And his Portuguese grandparents literally lived for him. They're both gone now. He was the firstborn grandson. There were two granddaughters, and they were very loved by the grandparents, but that is a society that prefers the male over the female. So when my son was born in 1997, his grandparents lived for him. My son never spent a day in daycare. He walked to his elementary school, he walked to his middle school, and he walked to his high school. Never spent a day in daycare. His grandmother or grandfather would be waiting to pick him up after school. They would walk him to school in the morning. We all lived in this one little community in the west end of Toronto, Mississauga. And even though my marriage to his mother did not work out, I have an eternal gratitude to her family and their culture for what they gave my son. My parents, they couldn't even hang around for Christmas. They had a second residence in Florida, and they didn't even want to miss a month of golf. So when the golfing in Canada stopped in October, they would close up the house, and by November, they would be gone to Florida to golf all year in Florida, all winter in Florida, and then they would come back in the spring. And then my mother would sometimes complain to me that she doesn't see her grandson, my son, enough. And I would just keep my mouth shut. But the truth is, they were unbelievably selfish. And my father worked in government, retired at a very high level, His pension, my father retired in 1992 at the age of 55. Okay? Retired in 1992 at the age of 55. And the pension he received to the day he died in 2022, June 25th, 2022, his pension still exceeded the salaries most millennials and Gen Zers are making now for the first 5 or 10 years of their life, unless they go and get the master's degree and the PhD, and even then there's no guarantee. Okay? That was the baby boom generation. I am not a baby boomer. I am an early Gen Xer. Okay? And it engendered in my parents a tremendous selfishness. And they never caught on to it. Whereas my wife's family, which were simple people, they came from the Azores in Portugal. They woke up with the sun. They moved rocks. They put yokes on mules to work the land. They were honest people, and they had good hearts. And they loved their children and grandchildren. So can we turn this system around? I don't know. I don't think there's any interest in it at this point. You see, the negatives can never really run things. What Kat said about their system got out of control. They've produced too many unsold people. There's too many people in this satanic culture now. She's right. Satanic culture is derivative of divine culture. Ergo, it's a parasite. Parasites can't live if they kill the host. This is why criminal organizations kill each other, whether they're conscious of it or not. They all know you need a healthy host to live as a criminal. You need a healthy host to live as a Satanist. So how are the Satanists going to take over the world and run things? Well, the answer to that question is unfolding in front of you right now. Isn't that amazing? A fellow I knew a few years ago said to me, He said when you go back to the ancient texts, societies always begin in a garden and end in a city. This is the cycle. What I'm saying to you today is your highest chance of survival is going back to the garden. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.